Hey y'all, it's Becky here from the Beckisphere, and welcome back to my channel. If you're new here, hi, my name is Becky, and every Monday and Thursday I talk about the climate. The problems, yes, but the solutions, yes. So if that sounds like something you would be interested in, go ahead and hit that subscribe button, click the like, share, comment, all that good stuff. And today we're going to talk about how even though I knew climate change for 6 years, I avoided talking about it or doing anything about it, which is a little different than now. So let's get right into the video. So before I start, I'm just going to say that one of the reasons why I decided to make this video is because I know that a lot of other people avoid thinking and talking about climate change too. I mean, that's one of the reasons why I made this channel, is so that it becomes more approachable for people to talk about it, because otherwise nothing will get done if it never gets talked about. So yeah, so this is my story, I guess, on how I came to the conclusion that I needed to focus on climate change. To start, I guess, we're gonna have to go all the way back to me in 3rd grade. So that would be like 2006? I don't know, I can't math. I'll put it on the screen whenever I figure out when that was. But in 3rd grade, I knew that I wanted to study marine biology. And if you want to hear the story of how I learned in 3rd grade that I wanted to study marine biology, that's a different video. And you can let me know in the comments below if you want to hear that. But yeah, so I learned that I wanted to be a marine biologist in 3rd grade. I was fascinated by jellyfish. That was my main focus, is that I wanted to study jellyfish. And I held strong to that interest all the way until majoring in marine biology in college. And while that was happening, I also showed interest in writing, which eventually would turn into my love of journalism. And so I continued kind of going on those paths, learning about both marine biology, specifically jellyfish, and also journalism, or in writing, which would eventually become journalism. And with my marine biology background, it was really hard to not talk about environmental problems. I mean, you have plastic pollution, you have ocean acidification, you have overfishing, you have climate change. So these are all really big topics, and they definitely did come up when I was getting more and more interested in marine biology. But other than hearing about it and needing to study it if I had to, I really didn't look further into it, because that topic honestly scared me. All those environmental problems scared me a lot. And it just, it was terrifying. And I was just a little person, and I knew that, probably even back then I knew that if I started to learn more about it, then it would change the trajectory of my life, and boy was I right. Yeah, but anyways, so 3rd grade, knew I wanted to be a marine biologist, but I remember growing up with my family, going to the Monterey Bay Aquarium all the time, and they talked about environmental issues there, but I wanted to just focus on jellyfish, focus on my love for them, and that was it. So moving a little further along, in 7th grade, I got into a camp that encourages girls to go into STEM fields like science, technology, engineering, mathematics, that kind of thing. So I studied for a week at Stanford University, along with a bunch of other 7th grade girls from the area. And I decided to take the marine biology course because it was a thing, and I was like, yeah, I'm definitely taking that. So I took that, and in that course, we did talk about environmental issues there as well. So I really can't point to a time when I first heard about climate change or a lot of the other environmental issues, because it really was around me from the beginning, but I refused to show any interest in it because it was so scary. So it just seemed like a really big problem. It seemed overarching. I wasn't going to be the one to solve it, right? So I kept going, kept being interested in jellyfish and marine biology and writing and journalism, but I was not going to put those two things together. I was determined to keep journalism just a hobby that I just liked on the side, and marine biology was going to be my main track. I wanted to study in a lab and study deep sea ecology, which was as far away from environmental problems as possible, right? Like deep sea, nothing can touch it. Turns out there's microplastics already down there. I kept going with that sort of purposeful ignorance, I guess, as I continued to get into marine biology. I got an internship at the Monterey Bay Aquarium, and so I interned there as a team conservation leader for 4 years, for every single summer. And I was in the Bay Area, so I would drive like an hour and a half down every single time I was getting there. So that in itself probably wasn't very conservational. But anyways, so I would go down there, and I would be one of those people that would be at the touch pools and talking to people that were going to visit the aquarium. And during that period of time, there were definitely conservation issues that I did talk about. We talked about overfishing, we talked about plastic pollution, we talked about climate change. But that was the only time I talked about it. I picked up plastic from the beach. I figured that was good enough, right? So I kept going throughout high school. I co-led my marine bio club, where we just focused on fun animals that lived in the ocean, and I got accepted to University of Oregon for marine biology, and off I went. So then freshman year came, and I took literally every class that I could relating to hard sciences, and I did not touch environmental topics at all. Little disclaimer, if you're going to be going into college as a freshman, don't take a really hard course load for your first time. You are going and leaving your family, you're in this new environment, you need to make new friends. Don't overload yourself, because I did, and it was awful. Let's put it this way, this is when I discovered that I had anxiety, and started to go through that whole process of understanding that disorder, and it was a really hard time. And so I was not going to add environmental issues on top of that. Just didn't have the time for it. So all throughout my freshman year of college, I continued to not think about environmental issues, not talking about climate change. I was going to focus on jellyfish. I was going to focus on marine biology. I was also going to focus on journalism, because I found out that they had a really good journalism program there as well. And so casually, I added a journalism major. And then suddenly I was a marine biology and journalism double major. And when people asked me, oh, are you going to go ahead and combine those two to be either a science or environmental journalist, the environmental thing would always come up. And I was desperately saying no. In fact, I didn't even want to combine those two. I wanted to focus just on jellyfish in the marine biology world, and then I wanted to focus on hard-hitting news reporting, and also just empowering women through like young teen magazines sort of thing, because I found that there wasn't really that many magazines that didn't just go and talk about gossip and sex and all that kind of stuff when I was a teenager. So I really wanted to create something for like high school girls that would encourage them to, you know, build their career and get internships and be creative and crafty and stuff. So that was what I wanted to focus on with journalism. I did not want to combine those two, regardless of how much that would have made sense to do so. And so I just kept going, not connecting those two at all, and that continued through my sophomore year. But my sophomore year, a couple things happened. One, I moved into a townhouse with 3 beautiful women that I had met in color guard, and one of them was an environmental studies major. And so through just her existing by me, I learned more about the environment from that. And then on top of that, I found an environmental magazine that was run by a bunch of students on campus. And so I decided to go ahead and join that because I wanted to gain writing experience, and I didn't know of any hard science writing that I could do. So I was slowly getting into the idea of, okay, maybe science journalism. We're not going to talk about environmental issues at all. But I joined this environmental magazine regardless. And that was kind of where all the floodgates opened, because then I started learning more about topics, and I started to sit in on environmental club meetings, and eventually I ended up kind of joining the environmental club meetings. And then I had to deal with the whole thing of, okay, journalism versus activism, which is a whole nother video that I do want to do. But I kind of opened up to the idea that, shoot, you know, climate change especially really hit me hard. It was a really big problem. I was like, how did we go through life for so long without knowing about this? But then I had to remember, wait, I purposely didn't learn about it because I knew that it was going to be scary and depressing. And that's the way that everybody else probably thinks too. So I just slowly kind of went into it, and I remember oftentimes I had called my parents and I was crying because I had learned more about these different environmental problems, and I was like, oh my gosh, this is so stressful. There's so much, and I'm just one girl. I can't do all of this, you know? Because I have a very bad habit of putting every problem on myself, which is not a good idea, especially with overarching problems like climate change. Don't put all of it on yourself, because you can't do it all by yourself. So it was really problematic for me. And then junior year hit, and I was not doing as well in lab courses and hard science classes that I had hoped. Science never really came super naturally to me. I just kind of forced myself into it because I really wanted to be good at science. So I was struggling with that while trying to continue a marine biology major. And I had gone to the Marine Bio Institute, and I had met a bunch of incredibly smart people who were in the same field as me, and they honestly, like a lot of them, they are way better at lab work than I am. And so I was just kind of like floating around going, okay, so there's this environmental thing, but it's super depressing, but also it's super interesting, so I kind of do want to learn more about that. And then there's this marine biology thing, which I have wanted to do since 3rd grade, but it doesn't really seem like I'm the best at it. And it seems like I'm better at writing on the journalism side, but I did not want to write about the environment, except I kind of was, because I was doing it for just experience writing, so it was a lot. I eventually chose to switch from marine biology to environmental science, and that was a really hard thing for me because, again, I had wanted to be a marine biologist since 3rd grade, so I kind of felt like I was disappointing my 3rd grade self, which is not fun. You don't want to disappoint your 3rd grade self, like that just hurts. But I had come to the terms with the fact that I really did care a lot about these environmental issues, and as much as I wanted to, I knew too much, and I couldn't go away from it. It didn't make sense for me anymore to focus solely on like deep sea jellyfish or something like that, when there were all these bigger problems in the world that I might be able to help with. So, needless to say, the trajectory of my life definitely changed a lot, and it was really hard for me to get used to knowing that there were a bunch of very big problems, and knowing that I could only do a very little about it, and not putting all that stuff on myself. And I eventually had to learn that, one, it's okay to accept that this is a scary topic, but 2, I found that there were a lot of solutions to the topic too. So as I was going through my process where I was learning more about these environmental problems, I was also learning about a lot of really cool stuff that people were trying to do to solve these problems. And that was something that kept me going. I was like, wow, there's all this great stuff that people are coming up with to solve these issues, and so there's hope, you know? And then on top of that, I decided that regardless of which way things went, particularly with climate change, I wasn't going to be one of those people that knew that there was a problem and didn't do anything about it. And that's not to guilt anyone else. If you feel like you are one of those people, I just personally couldn't do it for myself. I needed to be on the active side of climate change as an issue overall. And so that is kind of my story of how I ended up going from completely ignoring climate change to it's my life. I'm extremely passionate about the path that I'm on now, and I can study jellyfish if I want later on if this whole climate thing gets solved, but to be honest, there's so many other environmental problems that even if climate change becomes a point that we don't need to talk about it anymore, I'm sure I'll find something else to talk about. So yeah, that was kind of my trajectory. I hope that you found this interesting. It was kind of a bit of a ramble, but I just wanted to show that if you are in one of the positions where you feel like you don't want to address it, you don't want to talk about it, or you recognize that if you do learn more about it that you will get more depressed about it, then there is light on the other side of the tunnel. I think part of it has to do with acceptance, that you accept that is a big problem and that you can't do everything about it, but also just that you can do what you can and that is good enough for you, and that's okay. And if you mess up, that's okay, because we're all human and we're all trying to figure out this really big problem, and sometimes you're not going to be perfect, you know? So anyways, I hope you found this interesting, and join me on next Monday, because we're not going to have a book club on Thursday because Thanksgiving. So I need to let my dog out, but I will see you next time in the Beckisphere. Bye.